Hi, I'm Lindsay Krause with James Madison University, and this is my literature review presentation on the effective facilitation and implementation of evolved technology in secondary classrooms. This literature review reflects the need for and effectiveness of professional development training for secondary teachers. It introduces the SAMR model, explores effective teacher training in technology, reviews other resources available to them, and explores different tools available for transforming lessons using technology. I was first interested in this because my principal put me in charge of the 5-year plan committee at school. She's required to have all the teachers implement lessons that slide the SAMR scale. For those who don't know, that's a way of categorizing the level of transformation a lesson undergoes when a low-tech tool is replaced with technology. So that's substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. She wants us more on the MR side, modification and redefinition, but most teachers don't know how, and we don't really get a lot of training on it. Most of the technology being used in our school is for substitution and is often not being used with a purpose. The research questions I decided to look for were, how can educators be trained to use the SAMR model to modify and redefine their lessons? What learning resources exist for secondary teachers for modification and redefinition? And what are the most affordable and least time-consuming tools available to educators looking to modify and redefine? As you can see, my research spanned lots of different search terms, probably because of the broad nature of my questions. But I wanted to keep out anything not having to do with secondary ed, and I wanted to make sure it focused on in-service teachers in a traditional classroom setting. As I was doing my research, I divided it into two categories, training and resources. I had a hard time finding peer-reviewed research on SAMR and tools that were both up-to-date and transformative, but I found a bit, and I supplemented when I had to with other sources. Then I explored the best possible options for both teachers and students, and I looked for similarities in what is found to be the best approach and technique for both groups. Okay, so let's focus on teachers first. In my research, I found that teachers need to focus on technology use before they can focus on transforming it. Compared to what I've seen at most schools, and with what the research says, as a whole, we're basically not doing it right. So I analyzed methods found to be effective and useful for teachers in the EdTech sense and went from there. I found that there are 4 main qualities of training that need to be combined for best practice. First, it needs to be long enough. We're just not getting enough time to train, and pretty much all of my studies showed that we need years to train to use it, and then continue to do so to keep up with it. The quality of the training is equally important. I found these 4 things that resonate throughout my research on effective EdTech training. The first one was collaboration. Teachers need to be able to work together, to bounce things off of each other, to get perspective, to get support, to go through the same things together. It also has to be applicable to them. If teachers are involved in the planning, if they're able to choose what they're learning about, and if it's content related, it's much more effective. They also need a lot of support, both from people who are the professionals and from their peers who are going through the same thing. So it's emotional support on top of technical support. And the last thing was active learning, being able to be involved in the learning process and not just watching a presentation, but being able to watch it and then try it out themselves and then use it in their classroom and then reflect on it. So all of these things go together to form a good quality training that, again, takes place over a long period of time. Unfortunately, little research applies specifically to SAMR, so I focused on what I called transformative technology. Pretty much just things that redefined how technology was used, incorporated inquiry and collaboration. I wanted to see how teachers can get support and training for that, and how that can be transferred to students through the exploration of various types of tools out there that can help facilitate that across content areas. Teachers need to be able to rely on something other than what's given to them within the walls of their classroom or the walls of their school. And so they should have a toolkit, something that they can go to when they need something. And those 3 things that I found in my research were online collaboration, so using online communities of teachers and educators to help support you in your journey through the use of technology. Virtual mentoring, which is very similar to the mentoring that we've all done, but This time you're new at technology, not at teaching, and so you have somebody mentoring you with that. And the other one is online teaching cases, where it presents you real life situations in real classrooms that actually happen on video, and then they're picked apart and analyzed, and you can see how they were solved, and people collaborate on that as well. So those are three really great resources that don't require an administrator to help you. So it's something that you can go out and figure out and do on your own. So I went into this research thinking that I was going to have a list of all the best tools out there that teachers can use and how much they cost and where to find them. But I learned in this research that there's no one size fit all tool for any teacher or any classroom for that matter, because every classroom is different and every teacher is different. So instead of narrowing it down so far, I chose to explore different types of tools. And then I also narrowed that down to types that would be best for secondary teachers, since that was my focus. Classroom capture technology, or CCT, is also known as screencasting, if anybody's heard of that one. And a lot of people use it in college. A lot of professors use it, but now it's being used more in secondary schools as well. It's becoming really popular for the flipped classrooms. So just seeing it as a flipped classroom isn't necessarily transformative. It's more on the lower side of the SAMR scale, but now they're becoming interactive. And so that's really cool. There's programs like Echo 60, Ask 3, Camtasia, Screencast-O-Matic. Some of them are free, some of them aren't. Screencast-O-Matic is definitely free. And the thing about it is, if anybody has access to the internet with their classroom, they can use these, but then also add a transformative aspect to it, like having students collaborate after watching it online. So it's another great tool. There's a lot of research about it that supports the use of it, and so I wanted to highlight that one specifically. Digital storytelling, that's another thing that actually has research to back it. This one study showed that it was really effective. It was a great tool for digital literacy, and it's not just for language arts. So storytelling is really a narrative about anything. And there's a lot of resources out there, and most of them are free. There's one called Capsule, and I liked that one because it was completely multimedia. So it's not just graphics. You can actually import your own voice. You can import videos and things like that. However, even just doing it with just the visuals would be considered a transformative lesson, and so I wanted to highlight this one specifically as well. The four other types of tools that were found throughout my research were games, virtual environments, simulations, and podcasts. So the games and virtual environments sometimes go hand in hand. They're very immersive, it spans content areas, and a lot of them can be, if not affordable, then free. Those two are a little bit more time intensive on the teacher in the front end, but in the back end it turns out mostly student centered, which is great. There's also simulations, which put the student into a situation to solve a problem or to do something. And so there are many, many, many free ones, especially to educators for um, all different types of content areas. The last one is podcasts, which is another word for streaming audio, pretty much. But it's posted online, and students can collaborate. So they're not only creating a product, but then they're sharing it and reviewing it and collaborating with each other on it. So these are all some really great tools that are mentioned throughout my review as well. Basically, what I found is that teachers aren't being trained enough, and that it needs to be longer, it needs to be content-based, it needs to be supportive, it needs to be sustained. Also, I also found that teachers have other options besides relying on administration. So with the internet at our fingertips, we're a lot more able to find a community elsewhere. So if we can't find it within our school, we can hop on the internet and we can join a community, we can do other training available online, and most of it's free. So it's a great way to really, I guess, bridge that gap between what we need and what we're getting. Another thing that's really key is for teachers to just start exploring. So it's sometimes hard to know where to start, but a great way to start is just to get out there and start looking. So looking at the different tools that are available. There are a lot of different books that have a lot of information on there. And just using wikis and Google searches to find what they need, and knowing what they need to start with is really important too. So using technology purposefully will really help you narrow down what it is that you're looking for. Basically, what I found is that there's no one size fits all fix for any of this. For the lack of training, for the tools that we need for our classroom. When it comes to training, research showing one thing, schools are doing another, and there needs to be some kind of research that closes the gap between what the teacher needs and the training that we're being given. In the meantime, though, teachers need to take control and use the resources available to them because there are a lot of things that do exist for them. There's a lot more research to be done, but in the meantime, we can do what we can. Limitations. Unfortunately, I had a few that I had found throughout my research and especially after it was over. One of them was that my SAMR focus was too narrow, there wasn't enough research. And then by using tools, the word tools in one of my research questions, I realized how broad that was when I was really trying to narrow it down. As I had mentioned earlier in my presentation, I had expected to be able to come up with a nice, neat chart, but just I needed to narrow it down to maybe a specific tool and then focusing, or maybe like a specific type of tool, and then focusing on the specifics and coming up with my nice, neat chart then. Um, the study also had to rely too much on things that weren't peer reviewed because of the lack of research on some of the things, but I was able to back it up with some research as well. So at least there was that. So now I know why all of my teachers are complaining about the lack of training. It's because they are being trained, but not in the right way. So now my next step is to figure out how to fix that. Thanks for listening.